Lakeview Schools, along with the communities of Cottonwood and Wood Lake, has a long and rich tradition of accomplishments. It's only fitting that the school and the communities remember, recognize, and honor the outstanding achievements and contributions of the past. The idea of the Hall of Fame started in 2018 with a conversation with the Stevens family. That led to our Hall of Fame committee. As I call our committee members' names, please stand. Ray Peterson. Amy Herrick. David Stelter. Kayla Fromm. Superintendent Dr. Chris Fensky. And our activities director, Matt Conrad. From that committee led to the nominations of our first class of inductees. To this wonderful brunch prepared by Marilyn Jarko and her staff. Our National Honor Society students to help serve. To this wonderful setup in our commons by Mr. Daryl Dirks. And my co-chairman and my co-MC, Mr. Tom Hinz. The Lakers social media and live stream expert, Mr. Phil Lallam. Our yearbook director and the lady with the wonderful pictures, Mrs. Karen Berg. And this all wouldn't be possible today without the organization and the decorations of Miss Heidi Beck. At Lakeview, we teach our kids that homecoming is not just about us. Homecoming is about those that have come before us and those that are going to come after us. And that's a great example of who and what Laker Nation is all about. At this time, we're going to start the serving lines, so you really lucked out sitting as close to the food as possible. We're going to have two lines, so you're going to go right to the kitchen area, and Marilyn will direct you, and we'll have two serving lines. The National Honor Society students will help there, and we're going to have juice and coffee here. So we'll start right here. We'll just kind of work our way that way. Thank you all for being here, and enjoy the food. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Hansen, principal at Lakeview Schools, and this is my co-chair, Mr. Tom Hinz. The Lakeview High School Hall of Fame is a memorial to the outstanding alumni, former students, coaches, advisors, teachers, staff members, and community members who have given themselves for the betterment of Lakeview High School and community, who through their citizenship and achievements have brought honor to themselves, their school, and their community. Today, we ensure that we always remember the inductees inducted into the first class of the Lakeview Hall of Fame here at Laker Nation forever. At this time, Mr. Tom Hinz is going to introduce the first team award.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Lakeview School is one of the best around. This guy here is definitely the energy of the whole school area. As well as Mr. Dr. Fensky, with all the additions, the $10 million addition, the turf football field. I think we're the envy of Southwest Minnesota. I'm going to talk about the 1985 girls basketball team first. Coach John Halling has over 200 wins, had 4 District 11 titles in a row, was a football coach, a longtime teacher at Wood Lake, Echo Wood Lake, and also I want to remember Nellie, the great assistant coach who passed away. I know he was definitely instrumental in the girls' success. I think everybody that ever played for Nellie would say he was the nicest guy around, and he's surely missed. Now I'm going to introduce the team from the 1985 girls basketball team. Ann Quisted. Ann Quisted.
Come on up, come on up.
Fawn Behrens. Ruth Barber. Kara Stelter. Julie Quisted. Stacy Slenner. Missy Pensky. Tammy Andrews. Stacy Bloxell. Jan Thompson. Chanel Bond. Coach Halling and Mrs. Nelson.
At this time, the Echo Woodlake girls basketball team, the 1985 Girls District 11 championship team, their representatives will speak on their behalf.
Good morning. Well, my name is Kara Stelter Ellefson. I was the lone senior on this team in 1985. And now, since I'm basically the only one eligible for the senior discount, I get to say a few words. On behalf of the 1985 Cougar girls basketball team, the District 11 champs, woo! I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee for this wonderful event and the rest of the individuals who helped put this on today. It's wonderful. And I want to say congratulations to the other inductees as well. I know I speak for the rest of the team in saying thank you to Coach Halling. Thank you for your patience with a bunch of drama-filled high school girls. Thank you for your encouragement, support, and coaching. Thank you for helping us achieve a goal that had eluded us for many years before. We also want to remember and thank Coach Nelson, or Nellie, for helping us to, among other things, perfect our rebounding skills. I'm sure that any of us who had a basketball player later in life had one that knew the importance of rebounding. I also want to thank our parents for all of their support and the community who turned out fully to support this team and continued to do so and continues to do so today. I don't know if we realized at the time how fortunate we were, fortunate to be from a small town school, but a part of something big. This event has prompted a wonderful trip down memory lane, and thanks to Ann Quisted for rounding us up and bringing us all back together. The fun part is that we picked right up where we left off, what seems like a few years, not decades ago. When we texted about this district win in 1985, some of us needed a little prodding on the details. What was the score? Who made the game-winning basket? Who had that little bit extra we needed that night? And what happened all the years after that first win, because the teams that came after accomplished even more. Fortunately, there are a few individuals who are always ready to remind us of any details we've forgotten. I don't want to mention names, Jason, Tom. Apparently, there was a last-second shot I took as a sophomore that perhaps I shouldn't have. Who knew? One thing was clear from the articles we found and shared: every game was a team effort, and there was no I in team. So while we may be a little foggy on the details, we do remember moments, the extra moments that Coach Halling spent with us over his lunch hour to help us perfect our jump shots, the extra moments that Coach Nelson spent teaching us the best box-out moves possible, because while you might not have a hot hand any given night, you can always box out. The moments of bus rides and game planning, carpools, running the stairs through the high school, trying to catch up to Missy, the moments of wins and losses, the moment the gym filled with parents, students, and what seemed like the entire town, and the pep band launched into any song that the trumpet section could play as loudly as possible. And moments like these are the moments we will remember and cherish. Some of the team went on to play ball in college. Most of us didn't, but we've accomplished a lot as students, athletes, wives, mothers, professionals. We started as a team and we've come back together as friends. It's truly an honor to accept this recognition. So on behalf of the Eckwood Lake Girls basketball team of 1985, thank you.
Next induction will be the 1989 Cottonwood Girls Golf State Championship team. I want to speak a few words about this team. They were coached by Mr. O'Reilly. His passion for the game of golf. I can see why they would never, ever probably lose a match, because he still tries to teach me something on the golf course, and I'm over the hill, I say. But his passion for the game, it reminds me of maybe 25 years ago when my daughter was trying to be a golfer, and he always had time for her to come out and teach her how to play the game of golf. He'd put down his clubs, he'd help her out, and eventually she made it to the state tournament twice, got a golf scholarship, and I can't think of him enough. Also, we want to remember his assistant coach, Jerry Sanders, who's not here today. Now we'll introduce the team. Sherry Van Uden, Netson Long. Kristen Biernable Johnson. Leslie Peterson Hart. Lisa Shannon Karen. Shannon Lowe. Heather Zick. Coach O'Reilly and Mrs. O'Reilly.
And the 1989 Cottonwood Girls Golf Team, state champions, their representatives will speak on their behalf.
Are you coming up? I'll go first.
Thank you. Yeah, I needed that.
On behalf of the coaches and players from the 1989 State Championship Golf Team, we want to thank you for this awesome honor of being part of the first Lakeview Hall of Fame induction. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to my family for all coming and being here. Oh, I'm getting a little emotional. And thank you for recognizing my dad, who couldn't be here. He unfortunately got diagnosed with the C word this week, COVID, not anything else, but, and he's doing fine, and he's hopefully watching. I believe it was in July that we were informed about this induction, and we started emailing each other about this honor, and it was discussed that someone had to come up and share a few words and share some memories and represent the team. And apparently I was the last one to say not it. As of yesterday, I was still trying to come up with some profound words of wisdom, and I was standing in my classroom at the school where I work and discussing my tendency to procrastinate, and my teacher friends were trying to give me some advice on what I should talk about. And the one friend said, "Oh, well, you always are quoting movies, so just get up there and quote a bunch of sports movie quotes, and you'll be all good." I was like, okay. They all started throwing out quotes, and the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. There's no crying in baseball. Clear the mechanism. Show me the money. And I'm like, I'll probably take it in a different direction. But then my friend Sharon said, if you build it, they will come. And I immediately knew this is what I had to talk about. No, not a baseball field in Iowa, but a golf program that was started and built up by our fearless leader, Mike O'Reilly, and then eventually my dad. Apparently, you can only have one named coach at the time, and so Mike was the name on the front of the jersey and our leader, and Dad would come along and fill in the gaps. They started the program in the 1960s, before there was a golf course in town, and so they would hit balls in the field where North Star is now located. It was primarily a boys' program to begin with, but slowly girls started joining, and the dynasty started to take root. In 1976, the Cottonwood Country Club opened up, and so did the beginning of the domination of the girls' golf program. From 1977 through at least 1991, for over 15 years, the Cottonwood girls' golf program had either a team or an individual at the Minnesota State Golf Tournament. My sister, Brenda Sanders Wentworth, was the first female golfer to attend the state golf tournament as an individual from Cottonwood when she was only a 7th grader, and was eventually joined by others and finally went on as a team when she was a senior. Heather and I, daughters of the coaches, although very young, had a ringside seat for the building of this dynasty and couldn't wait to be part of the program. Several of us had older sisters that played before us, and others had parents very involved in the golf community in Cottonwood, so had great inside look at the players and teams that came before them. In looking back at some of the articles written during the 1989 season, an independent reporter came out to spend a day with us at practice to find out more about our longtime program success. And me, even then wanting to have something profound to say about our team, came up with we are one big happy family. And it was true. We truly love being together, and even though golf is an individual sport, we always focused on us as a team. In addition to our incredible coaches and parents and families that were so instrumental in our success, the piece that we could not have done without was the support of the Cottonwood community, and even more specifically, the support of the Cottonwood Country Club community. There was never a time we were made to feel unwelcome at the course, even if it was just to hit some practice balls or to get in a quick practice round of golf. We always knew we had something special when we would be up at the state tournament and there were hundreds of Cottonwood fans following behind us on every hole and willing to relay messages from the coaches who weren't allowed to talk to us on the course. They developed their own kind of sign language, and we would always look behind trees and there would be somebody poking their head out trying to tell us, put it back in your stance, or, just open your club face. Or there was always somebody to bring us a cool towel or help us locate a lost ball, or hold an umbrella, or just provide a nice, polite golf clap of encouragement here and there. I know all of us will agree that winning that state championship was unbelievably exciting after several years of near wins. But what made it all the more special was to bring that championship home to our community. Nothing can describe the vivid memory of the feeling of being met at the edge of town by the Cottonwood Fire Department and then riding through the streets of Cottonwood on the back of those trucks with people lining and cheering all the way. It was a beautiful time of family and community. Mike and Dad built something very special, and all of us were so privileged to be a part of it, and we all thank them. And we all thank the Cottonwood community for the wonderful memories of a very special moment in our lives. And finally, we thank the Lakeview community for the opportunity to come back together and reminisce on this moment in our history and to celebrate the success of the golf program in Cottonwood. Thank you.
I'm not going to give up this opportunity when you have a large crowd and people can't get up and leave because they're too polite. I'm going to talk to you about something that I wanted. It takes about, they'll ask, what are you going to talk about? I said, about 2 minutes, so give me 2 minutes of your time. This team here, I wanted to thank, first of all, Mr. Hanson for starting this and the gentlemen that make the selection committee. And I'd also like to thank all the girls. Lisa mentioned it that once we started the golf program, we were the second most, and this is in 2 classes, so a lot of towns were bigger than we were. But we had 9 appearances in the state tournament, and only one school was bigger, and that was Elk River because of Kelly Skalecki that had more tournament appearances. But it took 9 times to go and knock the door to try to win a tournament, and it's not easy. And the only thing I want to say, the difference between going up there 8 times and not winning, but getting second or third, was you have to have fighters. These young ladies, believe it or not, were pretty good. And we sort of knew we had an idea they were going to win it, but it was a fight right to the end. And every one of them, of the 6 girls we had, improved their scores at the state tournament. That gave us the chance to win it. And when you get there, and I'm sure with the new class systems, the way this football program is being run compared to previous years, I think they'll have an opportunity in a 4-class system to go there. Just remember, you've got to improve the day you're there. And these young ladies did. Thank you. You were an joy to work with. And like the young lady from Wood Lake said, we aren't prima donnas or anything, but these were so nice to work with. When you get in the car after a match, win or lose, well, they never lost, so. But they were always happy. Gosh, I used to come back and I'd say, should we eat on the way home? Yes, we got to eat on the way home. They'd stop to eat. 2 would sit in the car, moping, and I said, aren't you going to eat with us? No. So they'd sit there. This crew did not, and I tell you, I enjoyed them immensely, and thank you for listening.
The next inductee is Auggie Hinz, a 1965 graduate of Wood Lake High School. Auggie was one of the great running backs under Coach Doney. They set a record of over 580 points his senior year. They became the first 8-man football team to ever win 10 straight games. Auggie scored at least 30 a lot of records were lost or weren't really kept, but we're pretty sure he had 37 touchdowns and 30-some extra points for a total of 250 points at least. Auggie was also, I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and they said with 8-man football you had to have strong players at every position. I think Auggie played linebacker, and they said he was a tough tackler, and also he was the captain of the team. Congratulations, Auggie Hinz.
Like my cousin Tom said, I'm Auggie Hinz. I grew up on a farm 5 miles south of Wood Lake. My brother Dale farmed that farm for many years, and now my twin nephews, Mike and Ben Hinz, are still in the farm. I think what is it, Dale, 5 generations? Yep, 5 generations on the same farm. The fall of 1964, it's 57 years ago, was very special to me and Wood Lake football. As Tom mentioned, we went 10-0, and the record that I saw, we scored 564 points. All I know is that whatever the final total was, it was a state record in 1964. We also held our opponents to 94 points. Our coach, P.W. Doney, who is also being inducted today, had us line up in a single wing. And I lined up maybe 4 or 5 feet behind the center. And our big play that we had was play 26, which was end around. Blocking. I was the runner. These short little legs. A few years back, I met Woody Miller, from Russell, and he said once you got around that corner, he said it was a touchdown. I had myself as 36 touchdowns with enough extra points to get to 250. Like Tom says, it depends on which newspaper you read, because all the reporters had something different. So I would line up behind the center, and the ball was hiked to me, like I said, 4 or 5 feet behind. Our left tackle pulled, and we had another halfback quarterback and the right end. And I got to thank everybody that blocked, because in a little bit I'll get to another little story. One time as a junior, I tried to run over a tackler. Don't know what game it was, don't know. Well, anyway, I fumbled the ball. The other team recovered. So the next Monday at practice, after practice was all over, PW had people line up on every 10-yard line. And then he said, Hinz, you get over here on the end. He says, before you get to go in tonight, he says, you have to elude every one of those 10 tacklers. And then he showed me, well, we talked about spin moves and stuff like that. Another thing that I did as a junior, and this may sound silly, but at noontime at recess, there was a bunch of us guys. We would get together and get the old mats out on the floor, and we would practice jumping over our classmates, tucking and rolling. And I think I got up to maybe 5 or 6 people that I could jump over and then tuck and roll. The benefit of it was when we got near the goal line, quite a few times I would jump, hit somebody's back, and land on my, do a somersault, land in the end zone. my brother-in-law asked me, he says, "Do you remember your first touchdown?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I was a sophomore, and I ran one of those around the ends. But the only problem was, Coach Doney was going, 'Go Bruce, go Bruce, go Bruce.'" Some of you may know Bruce Cozen. It was Bruce Cozen standing by the coach, and he says, "Coach, that's not me." Okay. So after that spin move thing that Coach Doney does, I can remember being very tired when we got into that after that practice. Because of the points I scored and the success of the team, I was named to the Minnesota All-State 8-man football, and very thankful for that. Football is a team sport, and this was made very evident toward the end of one game. We were way ahead. It was towards the end of the season. And as the ball was hiked to me, the next thing that happened was me being tackled. With the coach's permission, the Woodlake team did not block anybody. And after it was all over and go over to the side, coach says, "Hey," he says, "do you appreciate your teammates now?" So the answer to that is yes, yes, yes. I played 1 year of college ball at South Dakota State. By the time that I got to college, I thought I needed to be a bigger person. Well, I put the weight on. I lost what little speed I had, and as I remembered, I sat way down at the left end of the bench and didn't play much. So I talked to my dad, or my dad talked to me, and he says, "You know, you're not going to be able to play football the rest of your life." He says, "You got to concentrate on your studies." So I was in electrical engineering. I got my BS, then I got married, and we stayed and took in the MS, the Master of Science in EE. Now, when I was in college, I met my wife, Carol, at the Canby Yellow Medicine County Fair, and and the reason that we met, where is she? Where's Sherry? Sherry was out with some friends, and I knew, and she was supposed to be on her way home. And I met some kids in Hanley that I knew, and they knew from Granite. And so here we are, walking around trying to find this girl that I've never seen before. And towards the end of the fair, I asked my wife for a date, and it's now, 55 years later, married for 52. And got a little story to tell you. So our son Todd was born in South Dakota when I was doing my graduate study. So moved on from there and went to Cherokee, Iowa, where I took my first job at Wilson Food Packing House. And our daughter Tara was born in Cherokee, Iowa. Then I took a transfer to Louisville, Kentucky. Well, we live on the Indiana side, and our son Matt was born in Indiana. So we kind of talked it over, and we didn't want any more kids, so we never moved again. I gotta thank everybody that's here today, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you came here for me today, please stand up. Of course, my family's from Indiana. I have a niece from Colorado, brother-in-law from South Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and a lot of Minnesota. Colorado? And so it was just a privilege for me to come back. We've treated this weekend as a kind of a family reunion. I do have one aunt from South Dakota that she was planning on being here today, 95, and her grandson has COVID, so they were not able to make it. So, you know, it's just a privilege to be here, to be inducted, and thank everybody for coming. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
The next inductee was Doney. I lived in Wood Lake for 35 years. People still ask me if I lived there, and I say no, I've been in Cottonwood for 35, so you do the math. I met, Mr. Doney back in 1961. He lived across the street from me. Doney was one of a kind. He started teaching and coaching out in South Dakota, at South Shore, South Dakota, and then moved over to Groton, where they named a football athletic field at him. I don't know if it's still named after him or not. Then he went to Canby. He coached there for 3 years. I don't know if they got rid of him or if he moved on or something, but 2 years later, the Canby basketball team that he coached was in the state tournament in 1950 and 1951. They ended up being the runners-up in 1951. I'm sure Mr. Doney had something to do with that influence. Canby's loss was Wood Lake's gain. Doney came to Wood Lake in 1948. There just happened to be a little lady that took her first teaching job. My mother, her and Mr. Doney came in the same year, 1948. I always asked my mom, how could you be teaching in 1948 when you graduated in 1947 from Appleton High School? She didn't really tell me why. Doney was, I just played a little baseball for Coach Doney and a little junior high basketball, but he was one of a kind. He was a disciplinarian. You did it right or you weren't on the football field or basketball field or on the baseball diamond. He had 4 undefeated seasons in football. His record was 106 wins and 39 losses. His first 2 years, they won the East-West Conference Championship games. His 1948 team, his first year, they scored 334 points and gave up 44. The next year, they were 8-0. In 1964 and 1965, Doney led the team to 23 straight wins. They've ended up with 3 wins at the end of the 63 season. They were undefeated Auggie senior year at 10-0. And with Charlie Munsch at quarterback in the fall of 1965, it was either the Minnesota Twins or the Wood Lake Warriors that were on top of the world, as they had another 10-0 season. Doney was unique. He coached every sport there was, mostly by himself. He did the Little League. He coached the junior high football, basketball teams. He drove the school bus. He got the field ready. He kept score. He was inducted into the State Coaches Basketball Association Hall of Fame in 2011. After 1966, the spring, he moved on to Hector, where he coached for a few more years. He brought their only District 12 title to Hector in 1968. He was tough, but he was fair. I think the 5 or 6 people that played for Coach Doney here, Auggie, Charlie, Dale Hinz, Herman Bond, probably have more stories about him because they all played for him in high school. But I think Doney has 2 daughters that are living, one in California now and one in New Mexico. I think Doney probably would be like the old Frank Sinatra song. He did it his way. Thank you.
Before we introduce the next inductees, I'd like to invite Mr. Coach Ray Peterson, or also known as Coach Grandpa, what we call him. Come on up to the podium.
I wasn't expecting to be up here talking to all of you, but I know the majority of you here. I've had the privilege of coaching at this school Okay, is that better? Talk closer to it? Okay. For over 32 years. Basketball for 5. Thanks to Coach Yanka, he got me started coming up here. I'm just a little nervous there, Coach. I meant a few words. No, I'm not. But I've had the privilege of coaching many of the kids from Woodlake and also Cottonwood. I used to play at Woodlake when I played for Bellevue. That's my hometown. And in Cottonwood. And some of those players I played against are in the Hall of Fame that you've already listened to. But I've had a lot of good times and privilege to work with such excellent coaches. And I want to thank Tom Yanka for getting me started in this, because you never know what path you're going. 3 of the inductees tonight, or this morning I should say, I had the privilege of coaching. That's Brady Rosa, Reed Stevens, and Jesse Javens. That was some of the hardest coaching I ever had to do when we lost those guys. Their numbers are very significant in tying them all together. Jesse's number was 52. If you got a pen, write this down. Reed's number was 75. That comes to a number of 5275. Brady's number was 27. That's right in the middle. I thought that was kind of unique. I always try to get to know the players that I coach on a first name basis and on a personal basis. We all have coaching memories where the kids really make an impression on you, or hopefully us coaches make an impression on them that they can carry on for the rest of their lives. Brady, when he left, I was an adjuster with State Farm Insurance. And when I got the call, I had to put my files down and leave. because I was pretty torn up. And I always tell the players to get in a circle and look at each face, because that face is going to be branded in your mind for the rest of your life. Little did I know that the following year of a 7th grade group that were involved in a bus wreck, that would come to a reality. And I had to go right in that media room, right here, with my team of that year, 2 of which were girls. One girl was a defensive end. She married my outside linebacker. That was pretty unique. And now they have a little boy named Owen. But I like to do something special for each and every player, no matter how small it was, because as a teacher, and I'm not a teacher, you never know what kind of an impression you're going to leave on these kids. You teachers out there, I look at Mike O'Reilly and the impression he made on all the kids that he got the privilege of coaching, and the impression he made on my own daughter, my own son. They talk about you to this day, Mike. But I talk about these 3 boys that are going into the Hall of Fame. Brady, I used to take him goose hunting. In fact, we have a place on Lady Slipper Lake where we used to go that I put a sign up that's called Brady's Point. Reed Stevens, I took him goose hunting, and he could never shut up. He asked more questions and was so inquisitive and so intelligent that he wanted to know anything and everything about what you did. Why do you set the geese that way? Why do you call the geese that way? And this. That following winter, he had a full outfit of camouflage gear, and we were going the next year. I've hunted with his dad. Jesse Javens. He was my backup fullback, my starting middle linebacker. And he was tough. We went down to RTR one time, and I put him in at running back. And Auggie, you'd know about this. He was bound and determined he was going to score. But he always still had his heart was on defense. He took 4 RTR players into the end zone by himself. Very strong individual. But when we lost those 2 boys in that bus accident, the team wanted me to come into that media room with them. And that was some of the toughest coaching I have ever had to do, because they were devastated. And one of the boys, I'll name him, Jacob Auggie, came to me and he says, "Coach, you remember when you told me about branding those faces in your memory when we were just 7th grade? Now I know what you're talking about." Because it happens to all of us. It's life. And the other thing that I always try to teach them was the 3 F's. Mr. Stevens, what are the 3 F's? He was my center, and that was Reed's brother. Those are life's priorities. There's a lot of things that are a lot more important than football. Your faith comes first, your family comes second, and your football comes third. I could tell stories all day long up here, and I didn't know I was going to be asked to come up here. So this is completely off the cuff. But you inductees that are coming in, what an honor for you. But what a memory you have created for our communities. And that's the reason that you have been inducted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Coach Grandpa, Coach Mr. Ray Peterson. Our next inductee was a 2002 Lakeview graduate. He lettered in football for 3 years, hockey for 3 years, and also baseball for 3 years. He was a Lakeview Student Council member, an American Legion Boys State member. 2002 Lakeview graduate Braden Rosa and his family will come up and speak on his behalf.
They actually mean Brad will speak.
First thing, Ray, thank you for your kind words. The one thing that Braden would be complaining about right now is we're right in the middle of duck season, and this is wasting good duck hunting time. Thanks to the committee and for selecting Braden to this this honor. It's really humbling to have our son be part of this group of heroes that, you know, preceded him playing football and for these communities and baseball, and he was the first Cottonwood, Wood Lake, Lakeview person to ever letter in hockey, and he did that over at Marshall High School because for some reason he didn't think basketball was his sport. So his mom and I are very, very proud of him. There's so many people in this group that influenced his development as a person, from a person like John Halling or Tom Yonka or whoever else were here, that I happen to think that he was such a great kid because of the influence of the community that was around us. And so it's hard to, I got a million stories about him that he could, you know, tell about his football career and what he did up at Bemidji, but he would say, "Dad, you're taking away good hunting time." So just to demonstrate what kind of a kid he was, when he played football at Bemidji State, he came home because he was not traveling with the team. He was going to be redshirted that year, so they were out of town, so he came home to Lakeview High School and walked around, and I wasn't reffing at the time, so I was there too, and one fellow school board member by the name of David Auggie was standing on the sideline, and Braden came up to him and said, "Hi, Mr. Auggie, how are you?" And David said, "For a short time, I was really worried about having to talk to this young 18-year-old kid because I didn't know what to say to him." And he said, after about a minute, I knew that Braden knew what to say to me. So to me, that was the influence of the community, and what a good job you did raising our son. So thanks for having us part of this, and congratulations to everybody else. So thank you.
Coach Grandpa took me hunting at Brady's Point when I first moved here, and so a goose comes in, and we both pull up to shoot, and my gun clicks, and he shoots and gets the goose, and he goes, "Hey, nice shot, Scott. Good job, buddy." So it is. It's a great place to go hunting. Our next inductee and his family is part of the reason that we're all here today, is the conversations we had in 2018, which led to the committee, which led to the brunch, and led to this ceremony today. But our next inductee would have been part of the graduating class of 2013 of Lakeview. He played football, was in the Boy Scouts, part of the speech team, part of the band and choir, people-to-people ambassador to Australia, and a 4-H Swan Lake skipper. And on behalf of Reed Stevens, his family will speak on his behalf. Congratulations to Mr. Reed Stevens.
Well, I have to say that Coach Grandpa is right. If Reed was here, he'd probably have a million questions that he'd want to ask about the day. But on behalf of Team Stevens, I would like to thank the committee for the honor of our son Reed and our brother to be chosen. I'd also like to say that while we maybe started the conversation, the actual seed was planted by Daryl Derricks, who had a vision for the Hall of Fame to be created, and I think that he should be honored right now. We would also like to say thank you to the committee, to Coach Hansen or Principal Hansen for all the work that he put into making that dream that was started with a seed that led to a conversation that led to the fruition today. So thank you. As we look back on Reed's life, there are a few things that we felt that were important that we could speak to. Now, if you were a member of his class, they would probably tell you things about the hour-long presentation that he once gave on the finer points of Star Wars. But we think that there were some other accomplishments that probably would be lesser known that might be beneficial for those to know about him as a member of the inaugural class. One of the things that Reed loved was art, and he loved drawing. He loved everything about it. And one day he said, "Why aren't there any art shows in this region," meaning Lyon County? He went and talked with the larger arts corporations or organizations in Marshall, and they said, "Yeah, that's a nice thing." And it was kind of the following message of, "Go away, kid, you bother me." And Reed wouldn't take no for an answer. So at that time, Marshall High School had a program where children could write grants. At the age of 8, Reed wrote a grant to create an art show, the first ever in Lyon County, just for children. He went to go and to do his presentation, and I got there, and it was high school kids, and they said, do you want to come in, Mom? And he looked at me like, "Don't you dare." So Reed went into this conference room in the Marshall Middle School, and he told them their pitch, and he asked for a whopping $50 to put on the art show. He had already spoken with the principal here at Lakeview, who said, "Absolutely, you can use the Lakeview building." And it was held right in this room. And when the thing was all said and done, they said, "Reed, we're really impressed with what you've put together for a presentation, but..." And when he relayed the story to me, he told me, "Mom, when they said 'but,' I didn't think I was going to get any money. But in fact, they said, 'But, Reed, we don't think you asked for enough. So we're going to give you $400 instead to host the art show.'" And so since then, we've started to see that the arts organizations in the Marshall area do indeed host youth-related art shows. Oh. So much of this conversation will center back to Coach Ray's teaching of the 3 F's, and I'm trying to highlight different aspects of Reed life because the members of Team Stevens on that end all get to carry this legacy. But for those of you who didn't know him, we want you to know some more things. When he was in 7th grade, he somehow learned about an event called See You at the Pole, and I was a part of a mom's prayer group. And he said, "Mom, would you go to the prayer group and would you ask the other moms if they would be willing to ask their bigger kids, because they were juniors and seniors and sophomores, if they would help out? But I'm willing to ask the question." So he took his little poster into the school, and it had a "See You at the Pole." It was a picture of the Lakeview flagpole, and on the bottom of it had a Bible verse. And being a former teacher of this school, I felt it was important that he ask permission to hang up posters. So he brought the posters in, and he went in and he asked, and I'm not even really sure what school official it was, but he went in and asked, and he said, "Would it be okay if we have this event, and can I hang these posters?" And they said, "Absolutely, Reed, you can hang the posters, but you can't put up the Bible verse." And they ripped his posters in half, so only the top part could be seen. Short while later, I got a phone call. Now keep in mind, his mother is a teacher. I've been a teacher for 30 years, and the phone call went like this. right before school, and I'm thinking he forgot something and I need to drive it from Marshall, and it went like this. Reed says, "Mom, I just want to let you know I may get suspended from school today." Exactly what happened? And he told me the story, and he said, but she didn't know, or he didn't know, that I have 3 posters left, and I'm hanging that poster in my locker with the Bible verse on there. And he stood by his convictions, and 2 of his good friends also hung the other 2 on their lockers. He didn't get suspended, and probably nobody noticed, but that was his righteous act of defiance. So, the final thing is about football, because football really meant a lot to Reed, and he cared an awful lot about being a football player and to wear the blue 75. And so there are 2 things, one that we knew about because we got to witness, and the other we didn't find out about until he passed away and was told at his memorial service. So the first one was we were playing 7th grade in Ivanhoe, and Reed typically played offense, and he was the right guard. But on that particular day, for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason was, he got to play a little defense. And while he was playing that, his sister, who was only 2 at the time and was soon to turn 3, was being really, really antsy. And she wanted to play on the playground because she could see it beyond the football field. And she couldn't take it anymore, and she was trying to run away and do these things, and I really wanted to just watch the football game. And 2 other inductees today's mother, Rita Javens, stepped up and said, "Here, Chloe, I'm going to draw you some pictures." So she took out a piece of paper in her notebook and started drawing little cartoon pictures. And if she hadn't have done that, I would have missed what happened next. There was a fumble by the Ivanhoe team, and the first kid to land on it was none other than number 75. And after the game, because we live in Marshall and we didn't want to have to him to ride the bus all the way to Lakeview for us to come here, we asked if we could sign him out and ride him home. The moment he got into the vehicle, we asked him, "Reed, how was that, getting the fumble recovery?" And I will never forget his words. He said, "I've waited my whole life to do that." So he loved football, but he also loved his friends, his classmates, and his teammates. And every week, Coach Ray would make them run the mile. And so they'd have to run the mile. And if you had never met Reed in life, Reed was what I refer to as the real men, one of the chubby boys that were destined to be linemen. And so he wasn't a fast runner at all. And so all the other boys would run the track, and most of them would finish, and Reed probably still had a couple laps to do. But even though he wasn't the best runner, he also wasn't the worst out of that team. And so he would finish his 4 laps, and he would cut across the grass and go run alongside those other kids, and he would tell them, "I'm not going to leave you behind." And soon that created a culture that the other boys would come and run with those that were still left behind. So in reality, he lived his life, Coach Ray, Coach Grandpa, living out the 3 F's. Because in the end, Reed loved God, he loved his family, and he loved his friends, and most importantly, he loved being a Laker. Thank you.
And in that hallway, we still have the Hall of Honor. In that hallway of the inductees tonight, the jerseys are still hanging on the wall and forever hang on the Wall of Honor. And then this fall, we were able to honor Parker Vianney's jersey number 70, which will go up on that wall later this fall. And then this hallway is now our Hall of Fame. Our next inductee, Mr. Hinz, will introduce.
The next inductee is Charles Munsch. Charles was or Charlie we called him, was a 1966 Woodlake graduate. I've been in this watching sports for over 60 years, and people still ask me, who's the best athlete you ever saw? And all you have to do is say Charlie. Charlie went to St. John's Parochial School, so he didn't get over to Woodlake till he was a freshman in high school. I'm sure Doney was happy to see him come over, because when you get a talent like that, I'm sure he would have been playing in 7th and 8th grade. Charlie played football, basketball, baseball, track. In the fall of 1964, I think, till the spring of 1966, if Woodlake was winning, Charlie was at the top of his game. He was the backup quarterback on the 1964 team that went 10-0. His senior year, he quarterbacked the 10-0 team, played defensive back. I know he threw at least 25 to 30 touchdowns. In 1965, Charlie was a junior. He led Woodlake to the District 9 championship, or District 9 runners-up, where they lost to Tracy. At Tracy, they always had their home court advantage, not that what had made a difference. In the spring of 1965, Charlie was a baseball player. I'm sure he loved baseball. He led Little Woodlake to the District 9 championship. He threw a 3-0 6-hit shutout over Minnesota, where they eventually lost in the region. In the spring of 1966, Charlie, captain of the Woodlake basketball team, led Woodlake to their only District 9 title. He scored over 1,098. He scored 1,098 points. They came up short in the regional semifinals to Hutchinson. Charlie had 28 points, including 14 in the last quarter, as the Warriors rallied before falling 4-0, or by 4 points. He was one-of-a-kind athlete. He played town team baseball for many years, did some coaching, played basketball and baseball at St. Cloud State University. And like I say, people ask me who's the best athlete you ever saw. It's no question was Charlie Munsch. Thank you.
Charlie, come on up.
Thanks a lot. You ought to know that Tom was the best damn manager we ever had, too. That guy knows more about sports around here than anybody I know. And thanks, Mr. Hanson, for it was a good day here. It's been a fun time. Two things I was going to talk about today was P.W. Doney. Tommy kind of took care of that, except Tommy forgot that he washed all the uniforms. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk about any of those personal things. You can read it in the pamphlet or on the plaque. What I want to talk about is how I got there. And there were two. First of all, I want to tell you that at this stage, it's hard to remember back then because I thought it was high school and then it was college and then beyond that. But I've been thinking about it, and I forgot a lot of stuff, but I wish it was more like my wife because she knows what she wore to school on her first day of school. And but they're sitting over at that table. There's my wife Kathy and my sons and their wives and my grandchildren, some of them. But anyway, let's get back to P.W. Doney. He was one of the most important people in my formative athletic career, as well as my brother, David, who was 8 years older than I was. I consider myself, as I look back, as I was kind of an outliner because my father knew nothing about sports. I didn't get any help from him as far as becoming an athlete. And then as I look back on that, none of my friends' parents really had anything to do with athletics that grew up in that previous generation. So I was fortunate to have a brother that graduated in 1958. And P.W. Doney came to town in 48, but in the 50s, Wood Lake had some really excellent teams, okay? And at that time, I was 10 years old. And why I consider myself an outlier is that when I was 10 years old, I hung out with my brother, and he didn't tell me to get lost or this, and he was on the basketball team, and they had a really good basketball team. In that era, with the Sunday paper, there was a full-page picture of the Wood Lake 1958 basketball team because they were ranked one of the best teams in the state, and that was before there was a class system, as you would well know. Well, what happened with that then is that team ended up going to the District 9 finals undefeated and got beat by Lake Benton. And so that stigma always stuck in my mind at that age because I saw it through those guys that was a big letdown for them. So it was always a goal of mine to get to the district finals and maybe do that for the community or whatever you want to call it. It was a personal goal. So getting back to P.W. Doney, Tom, the field is named after him in Groton because I was out visiting a friend of mine in South Dakota, a rancher that I played ball at St. Cloud with, and I was driving back to the town they lived in, and I saw a sign that said Groton. And so I said, heck, I'm going to go over there. It was only 20 miles, and I'm going to check this out. And sure enough, the football field there was named after, I don't want to call him Perry. I don't think he liked being called Perry. P.W. Doney, okay? And this guy was really formative in my athletic career. I mean, I had some natural ability, obviously, but he groomed that now. As Tommy stated there, that I went to a parochial school. And so we didn't have any baskets in the gym. And so at recess we go down, and we did have a gym, but it had up in the wall, the hot water pipes were about the size of a basket. So we'd have little games going and shoot at that thing. That I had to work with when I was in elementary school. And so, but I had the ability to work with Perry Doney in the summertime in the baseball program because he handled that. He handled everything. And so he got to know me, and he saw there was some talent there, I'm sure. So anyway, getting back to my brother, I would always hang out as a 10, 11-year-old with those guys when they'd be down at the basketball court working out and stuff and playing against each other. So I'd always hang around there hoping one guy didn't show up so they'd let me play. And so that's kind of the way we did things back then. It was kind of like the Sandlot days, like the movie back in those days. So then as I got to be, I never played junior high sports because we didn't really have any teams there. So how I compensated for that is that when I was in 7th grade, every night I would go over to the varsity basketball practice. And I'd sit in the bleachers and I'd listen to the coach and watch. And then after practice, I'd get a basketball and I would shoot until they kicked me out. And I'm sure P.W. Doney, he didn't really communicate a lot with me, but he was okay that I was there, and he didn't say much to me. But I'm sure that, and I know that he wasn't a very religious guy, But when I was in 8th grade, I'm sure he thought to himself, the Lord sending me a good one. Anyway, it was quite an experience. And so then Tom mentioned the district stuff. As I stated earlier, they kind of had that letdown in 1958 when they lost that. And in that season that we won that district 9 finals, again in a one-in-class system. We're Woodlake population of probably 400 or 500, and we're competing against all the bigger schools. And we, at the particular time in that year, Ballatin had a 7-footer named Carlton Johnson. I don't know if you ever remember that name, but they were ranked pretty high in the state because he was a pretty good player too. No, he didn't stumble around, he was good. And so we played them early in the year, and by the way, I should tell you that in that year, P.W. Doney stepped down from basketball, and we got this young guy out of Mankato State named Jerry Vanek. So he was our new coach. So we played them early in the year. They beat us by 25 points. That's the only game we lost that year. So now we're getting to the district issues again. We get there and we're playing Marshall. And Marshall had a good team because they were only 2 years off of winning the state tournament in 1963. And by the way, I did play at St. Cloud with Terry Porter, who was a phenom from Marshall when they won the state tournament. But anyway, we're playing Marshall. And these are just a couple quirky things, the stories to tell about that particular thing. We're playing Marshall, and we're behind. And they're beating us, and I remember this kid from Marshall they're shooting a free throw, and he walks across the free throw line. He said, "It's in the bag." Little did he know that we would not give up, and we came back and beat them. Now, so that took care of them. So now, who do you suppose we're playing in the district finals? Ballatin, okay? And I remember the night so vividly because it's over at the Tracy Armory, and we're out on the floor and we're warming up. And I looked out in the stands and I saw the faces of the people from 1958. And they're probably thinking they're kind of like the Vikings. Oh, we're here again. It's going to happen, the same old stuff. And I'm seeing that, and I'm kind of wondering too, man, we got our butts kicked the first time we played them. And we didn't have a guy over 6'2", Charlie Fisher. I'll never forget it. He had one move, and that was he did this fake to the right and went around the baseline and up in a reverse layup, and that was his move. So we're playing Ballatin now, and I'll get right to the chase. This is a tight game this time. And it's coming down to the last seconds of the game, and we got the ball. And the game is tied, or we're down by 1, I don't remember. But anyway, Charlie Fisher is up against a 7-footer. He gets the ball. I think it glanced off to somebody else, and he got it. And instinctively, he made his move, faked to the right, left the baseline, went up and made a reverse layup because the 7-footer couldn't get by the basket. Game over. And what a celebration that was. I mean, I tell you, that was a big goal. Ever since I was that 10-year-old kid and they got beat, I said, boy, this has got to happen someday. So I just had to tell that story. All right, so with that, I think I'm going to stop because that's long enough. But I just, I looked at Perry Doney's picture on here, and I saw the words teacher, coach. And really, the best coaches I've ever had were the best teachers. Because coaching is a thing, anybody can be a coach. You can coach, you be the coach. But to be a teacher and teach those skills to those kids and be able to do that and communicate that across to them is the biggest road to success, in my opinion. And I was fortunate to have people in my life that taught me how to do things. So with that, I had no speech written out. Tommy stole most of it. Thanks, Tom. I really mean that. He was a good guy. He's a basketball nut. But all right. Thanks a lot.
And just to let you know how much that Mr. Tom Hinz knows, he's got 2 pages up here, and he's got very little notes on there. So everything he's looking at the paper, but he's looking up at you. He's not reading anything off his paper. This is all out of his right here. So this man's a special man right here. So Mr. Hinz. Our next inductee would have been part of the graduating class of 2017. She was in 4-H. She was 3 years superior rating in piano. She was pony of the America's Club, and she was also a Swan Lake skipper. And her family will talk on her behalf. Emilee Olson.
So it was last night after the football game that I was told we were going to have to talk. And since then, I've been in denial that I was not going to have to get up here. But the one word that comes to my mind is blessed. I was blessed to get to marry my husband. I was blessed to live in this community. I was blessed to have 2 kids of our own and adopt 5 that God chose for us. And Emilee was one of them. And Emilee believed that a room was a better place when she was in it. And she made sure everybody knew who she was and what she was all about. And even though she was 9, she touched so many people's lives that we didn't even know about that continued to bless us. And I am blessed. I get to work in this building. Her picture hangs in that hallway. I walk by it every morning. I tell her hello, and I walk by it every night, and I tell her goodbye. And now it's over there as well. And so this is an amazing community. They're amazing people. She was an amazing little girl that was spunky and gonna let you know what she thought. Her name in Chinese was Chung Win, which is beautiful colors in the sky. So every time you see those beautiful sunrises and beautiful sunsets, it's been painted by her for us to let her know that she's okay. And this is a great place to be. It's a great place to work. And I can't thank everybody enough for letting her to be part of this amazing group of people. Thank you.
Our next 2 inductees, the first one was active in football and basketball, and his quote was to handle yourself, use your head to handle others, use your heart, by Donald A. Leard. Jesse Javens. And his brother would have been part of the graduating class of 2016, was active in basketball, and his quote is, "Smile. It is the key that fits the lock of everybody's heart." Hunter Javens. And to speak on their behalf is Jesse and Hunter's family.
We did not know that we would be speaking at all. Our family is pretty, we kind of keep to ourselves and do things our own way. And we too feel we were blessed with 2 amazing young, kind-hearted souls that also touched a lot of people's hearts in their own way. And we want to thank our community for everything that you have done for our family and holding us up through very difficult times and I just want to thank everybody and for keeping them in your hearts and in your minds.
And one more time, congratulations to the first inductees to the Lakeview Hall of Fame. Before we conclude today, just thank everybody for coming. What a great day to hear all the stories, and it just puts the exclamation point on that we all have a story. Everybody's story is important, and that Lakeview schools exist because of Woodlake, the school colors of Woodlake, and the school colors of Cottonwood, which now today are the school colors of Lakeview Public Schools, District 2167. And before you leave, Mrs. Karen Berg, okay, she's going to be taking pictures of all the inductees. I have commemorative plaques for every inductee. I have one plaque for each team. Okay, you decide who that goes to. If you want a plaque, all you have to do is call AP Design and they'll make you a plaque up. Just they said if the team members want them, we can get them made for them. But once again, just thank everybody for helping us be one of the greatest communities in the state of Minnesota, to help us learn and grow each day. And we love you all, Laker Nation. Thank you.